The literary movement we chose to research and analyze is science fiction. According to Britannica, science fiction, abbreviation SF or sci-fi, is a form of fiction that deals principally with the impact of actual or imagined science upon society or individuals. Compared to the other genres, science fiction is fairly modern, as some of the first books were published in the 18th century, such as Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, and is still popular today in young adult fiction.
The evolution of science fiction goes quite deep. Some people say that it started as myths about the gods, and others disagree and believe that it was post the Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment was when many people started to turn to science rather than religion. After this was the Industrial Period, where many steam engines and mechanical vehicles were made. A combination of those two time periods, added with some humanity aspects of peace or lack of it, and Gothic became the genre science fiction. Most people agree that Frankenstein was the first science fiction book ever made. And that would make sense because of the content it deals with. The doctor that was creating Frankenstein says, "When I considered the improvement which every day takes place in science and mechanics, I was encouraged to hope my present attempts would at least lay the foundations for future success." Frankenstein, page 73. This topic he was thinking of was biomechanics and furthering modern culture with science. This sparked the well-known writers Philip K. Dick, Jules Verne, and H.G. Wells.
The authors of science fiction are what makes this genre so special. Philip K. Dick, Jules Verne, and H.G. Wells are just a couple examples of famous science fiction writers whose work had a lasting effect on the science fiction genre. Philip K. Dick was an American science fiction writer who wrote many novels and short stories between 1952 and 1982. Dick wrote stories with themes exploring politics, society, and philosophy. Many of his work have been adapted into movies or television series. Some of Dick's more successful works are Do Androids Dream, of Electric Sheep, The Man in the High Castle, Valids, and Ubik. Jules Verne was a French novelist, poet, and playwright who wrote between 1850 and 1905. Verne's works were some of the first of the genre and influenced how science fiction evolved. His work has been translated into 140 languages, making him one of the most translated authors in the world along with Shakespeare. Verne wrote the popular books Around the World in 80 Days, 5 Weeks in a Balloon, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and many more, some of which have been made into films. H.G. Wells was an English writer who wrote science fiction novels and short stories between 1895 and 1946, while as a futuristic, and so much of his work is based around the future. H.G. Wells invented many popular science fiction themes that are still used in modern science fiction. H.G. Wells wrote the popular books The First Man in the Moon, The Red Room, The Shape of Things to Come, Tales of Space and Time, The Time Machine, and more. All of these authors have had a significant influence on other writers, filmmakers, and science fiction itself. Philip K. Dick, Jules Verne, and H.G. Wells are just some of the important influential names that contributed to making science fiction what it is today.
Science fiction, through the years, has made readers think, create, and innovate. That's right, science fiction books is probably why humans have so many neat gadgets and tools. An example is the countless jobs being fulfilled by robots. This was a part of so many sci-fi books. It may have been the sole reason for that happening. Secondly, in the book A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was made in 1973. It spoke of a book that contained all the knowledge of the universe. In 2010, we have the iPad. Coincidence or fate that this is science fiction books that have sparked the idea in somebody's head that led them to create tablets. Science fiction is now rated the fourth most popular genre of books, and there is no question why.
Science fiction is a very broad genre. There are many aspects to what makes a book a science fiction book. Overall, there are characteristics of what makes a book classified in the science fiction genre and or commonly seen. Firstly, there are two genres categorized in science fiction novels are classified into hard and soft science fiction. Hard science fiction focuses on more plausible and realistic ideas. For example, mathematics, physics, advancements in technology that we understand. For example, the 1865 novel From the Moon to the Earth, written by Jules Verne, an inventor named Barbicane, plans to shoot a Bullet Out of a Cannon, the Columbia from Florida. Uncoincidentally, NASA launched the first space shuttle into space on April of 1981, named the Columbia. Although unsuccessful, some of Verne's ideas from the novel had close similarities to NASA's launch, as choosing Florida to launch the rocket. Rockets are launched in Florida because any rocket leaving Earth's surface and traveling eastward gets a boost from the Earth's spin. On the other hand, soft science fiction focuses more on physiological, sociological, and anthropology concepts. In the 2009 book, later to become a trilogy with a prequel and made into movies, The Maze Runner by James Dashner, is about a futuristic dystopia where an organization called Wicked runs trials on a set group of teenagers such as the Maze to try to cure the flares, a disease. Although both topics are very distinctly different, it can be agreed on that both novels contain complex nuisance topics. Amongst the two classifications, other themes seen in science fiction are time travel, the supernatural, and fantasy. Contextualizing the text from science fiction, there are two main literary conventions that are consistent throughout the genre: allegories and archetypes, focusing specifically on the archetype of good versus evil. According to the Merriam-Webster, an allegory is the expression by means of symbolic fictional figures and actions of truth or generalizations about human existence. Quite often, allegories are used throughout the supernatural to represent humanity, such as the 1954 film Godzilla has underlying symbolism no one would ever think to consider. Godzilla focuses on the Japanese post-war anxieties. ING reports that less than a decade after the leveling of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the reminiscence of a mass harboring of doom laying waste to Japanese city is obvious, as well as covering the dangers of science and mistreated nationalism. Other examples where allegories are used is in Planet of the Apes, dealing with racial controversy, and in Dawn of the Dead, having allegorical qualities in relation to Reaganite militarism. Similarly, archetypes are often used in the genre. An archetype is the original pattern or model of which things of the same type of representations or copies, prototype. According to the Merriam-Webster, archetypes are seen throughout literature, like in Shakespeare and in the novella we read as a class, Heart of Darkness. The archetype that is most shows up through science fiction is good versus evil. Take The Hunger Games, for example. In the novel, the characters playing the good archetype are Katniss and Peeta, trying to get through the Hunger Games together and alive, and soon rebel against the Capitol, whereas the Capitol represents the evil archetype, as they are holding the Hunger Games where only one person will survive in the end. Although allegories and archetypes are not prominently seen in every science fiction platform, they can be seen in both hard and soft science fiction, and when determined, can enhance the understanding and meaning and purpose of the fiction.
There are so many great science fiction novels that it is hard to narrow down to just a few of the best and most influential to share with you today. But 1984 by George Orwell, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury are just a few sci-fi classics that are worth reading. 1984 is a dystopian novel by English novelist George Orwell that was published in 1949. The book is set in a nation of Oceania and follows the main character, Winston Smith, a low-ranking member of the ruling party of London, as he explores rebellion and the Brotherhood, a group who wants to take down the party while being consistently monitored by the all-powerful party. This novel is of totalitarianism, psychological manipulation, resistance, and revolution in technology. The term Big Brother, referring to a controlling person or organization, was created by Orwell in this novel and is a common phrase today. This book popularized writing about dystopian features that were not far from being possible, opposed to writing utopians or setting the story far, far away. 1984 has a huge impact on not only the genre of science fiction, but on society. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is a novella published in 1895 that follows a Victorian scientist and inventor known simply as Time Traveler, as he invents and tests his new invention of a functioning time machine. This novella includes themes of society, science, and technology. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells are responsible for the popularization of time travel. This popularization is one of the many ways this novella has influenced science fiction, as many books, movies, TV shows, etc. have been created from this idea. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is a dystopian novel published in 1953. This book is set in the future American society where books have been outlawed and firemen are in charge of burning any books that are around. Fahrenheit 451 tackles themes such as censorship, ignorance, and technology. 1984, The Time Machine, and Fahrenheit 451 are examples of classic science fiction works that have influenced and improved the genre of science fiction.
As there are many sci-fi novels, majority of science fiction transcends into forms of artwork as well. For example, visual arts. Two big names in the science fiction world are Jim Burns and Frank Kelly Freas. Both illustrators have had their fair share in creating artworks revolving science fiction. The first artist named Frank Kelly Freas is a Canadian-raised artist that is well-rounded in science fiction art. His work was first displayed in a magazine called Weird Tales magazine. He has a diverse portfolio of artwork from illustrating in magazines to book covers. He went on to win 2 Hugos, an award voted on by the Science Fiction Convention for the Best Professional Artist in 1955 and 1956. The art shown is Freas' front cover illustration to his book called The Art of Science Fiction. Besides Isaac Asimov's introduction, the book is solely artwork created by Freas. The artwork comes from his different works such as book covers and magazines. Another science fiction artist was Jim Burns, which he created science fiction and fantasy art. Jim Burns has created artwork for numerous forms of media. Originally, he worked as a pilot, Burns decided to go to art school and ended up illustrating for plenty of book covers. The artwork shown on the slideshow is a cover of a book entitled To Hold Infinity, written by John Meany. Lastly, in media, oddly enough, science fiction has a place in the music world. Linked is a video of a Filk convention held. Filk is a made-up genre of music that is a combination of science fiction and folk music. This clip is from an event held at a science fiction convention. Also, along with art, science fiction is also in many media platforms. So first of all, Doctor Who is one of the longest running science fiction TV shows with 37 seasons and 851 episodes in the show. The show is about adventures through space and time with the lead adventurer known as the Doctor. Star Wars. As for movies, Star Wars is one of the few big sci-fi movie series, another example being Star Trek. Star Wars has captured a large audience of various ages into its franchise as the first movie, Star Wars A New Hope, came out in 1977, and Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker comes out December 2019. The series is based in space with extraterrestrial interactions. Star Wars is most definitely influential for the genre as it has many generations hooked on the sci-fi movies. Doom. Doom is a science fiction video game, first released in 1993 with its latest game, Doom Eternal, released this past year of 2019. Doom is a first-person shooting game. The game is modeled based on comics, board games, novels, and books. Doom has helped pave the way for many games such as Half-Life, Halo Combat Evolved, as aspects such as the model of first-person shooting in Doom can be seen in the games.
Now for an excerpt from the book 80 Days Around the World, written by Jules Verne. This is when the main protagonist gets his idea to go around the world in 80 days, of course. Everyone is telling him that it's impossible, so they're making an outrageous wager towards him. 20,000 pounds, cries Sullivan. 20,000 pounds, which you will lose by a single accidental delay. An unforeseen does not exist, quietly replies Phileas Fogg. But Mr. Fogg, 80 days are only the estimate of at least possible time in which the journey can be made. A well-used minimum suffices for everything. But in order not to exceed, you must jump mathematically from the trains upon the steamers, and from the steamers upon the trains. Again, I will jump mathematically. You are joking. True Englishman doesn't joke when he is talking about so serious a thing as a wager, replied Phileas Fogg. Solemnly, I will bet 20,000 pounds against anyone who wishes that I will make the tour of the world in 80 days or less, in 1920 hours, or 115,200 minutes. Do you accept? Phileas Fogg's character that Verne created must have inspired many. The character's likability comes almost immediately, and the novel is filled with adventure and imagination. It shows that when you truly believe that something can be done with good calculations, it can. Who knows how many people this novel has inspired and simply put a smile on their face. The next novel is Ender's Game, written by Orson Scott Card, published in 2004. It is about Andrew Ender Wiggin thinking he is playing a war game simulated on his computer when he is actually being watched by the military and being trained to help the military fight against aliens. An enemy, Ender Wiggin whispered to the old man. I'm your enemy, the first one you have ever had who is smarter than you. There's no teacher but the enemy. No one but the enemy will tell you what the enemy is going to do. No one but the enemy will ever teach you how to destroy the conqueror. Only the enemy shows you where you are weak. Only the enemy tells you where he is strong. And the rules of the game are what you can do to him and what you can stop him from doing to you. I am your enemy from now on. From now on, I am your teacher. This novel is important to the genre as it covers themes of space, extraterrestrial, and is the creativity put into science fiction. Last novel is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, published in 1979, an outlandish tale about a man's journey with an alien as the after the world is destroyed, and altogether they hitchhike through the galaxy with the ships that destroyed Earth. There is a theory which states that if ever anyone discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplainable. There is another theory which states that this has already happened. This novel is a classic and a quintessential sci-fi book. The Hitchhiker's Guide to a Galaxy includes many of the characteristics and themes of that the genre includes. This book includes the themes of philosophy, obscurity, and space exploration. The level of obscurity that this novel reaches is the reason it is a quintessential sci-fi novel. It is an example of what science fiction is all about, thinking and writing outside of the box.